In this episode of the Creative Genius Podcast, Gail Doby sits down with Ali Faulkner, principal designer of AEF Interiors. Stay tuned to hear Ali's business story, the mistakes she made, and the importance of knowing your numbers. Listen close to learn Ali's valuable lessons.
Ali, it's so great to have you on Creative Genius Podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Gail.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So I would love for you to tell your story. How in the world did you get started with interior design? And tell us about your story in Orange County, just a little bit about you.
Gosh, okay. Never very good at making a long story short, but I'll try my best here to give you the SparkNote version. I used to work in luxury hospitality and consulting. So I used to come from a service-based background and worked in operations. I moved to Orange County 6 years ago, actually for another job. It was my first opportunity in being a part of a startup and actually building a company. I was with them for 2 years and life happens. Unfortunately, I was a part of a layoff. You take the chance by going to a startup, and I had the opportunity. This was like early 2019, where I started to think to myself, I really enjoyed building. And a lot of the startup companies I wanted to work for, they were all located up in San Francisco, and remote work wasn't a thing. My husband, being the amazing person he was like, Ali, I really love where we're living now in Orange County. You should look at starting something of your own. And I was like, okay, well, what am I passionate about? What doesn't require a ton of capital to start a business? And I was like, well, what I'm really passionate about is serving people. And that doesn't require a ton of money to start that type of business. And I believe in myself. I had a strong belief in myself that I could start something. And so I started to think to myself, at the end of the day, I have a good eye for design. People, would say I had cute outfits, and I had furnished our home and renovated our little $25,000 kitchen. And during that time, while I was interviewing for other jobs, I would be trying to take a phone call to take this interview. And the guy who would be showing up to do my tile would be like, hey, before you go, what color grout joint and what size? And I was like, okay, this process of interior design, this was terrible. The level of experience and service, I could make this better for people. So I had that light bulb moment in my head. I was like, okay, everyone has always said you have cute outfits. I had done our home. And it dawned on me that I could get into interior design. And while again, I wasn't necessarily accredited, hadn't gone to school for it, I knew what it took to build something from the ground up. And I saw myself and 10 other people do it at the startup company. So I really had the confidence to believe in myself. So I did a little bit of research, right? And I was like, okay, how do you make money doing interior design? And I learned, there's, products that you sell, and then there's service. And I said, I'm really good at service. I used to work in luxury 5-star hotels. I've built a client experience before. I can build this business. So that's the SparkNote version of my journey. And so I started the business in October of 2019, had no idea what was about to happen to the home industry. And I really have I would say I rode the tailwind of COVID. And I really think that now being in 2024, how we have grown, so much of that is me taking risks, but I would say very calculated risks by looking at my data, which has allowed us to propel and be where we're at, in the less than 5 years that we've been around for.
That's so crazy. Well, how many people are on your team now?
Oh, good question. So it's me plus 7 now, which is just yeah, I'm so grateful. And I never, ever would have thought we would have the team that we do at this stage of the company. But me plus 7 it sounds really weird to say.
Yeah, not bad for just a very short period of time. So how did you have this confidence? Where did that come from? Did you just grow up? You just born with it? What is it?
What I'll say is that I moved a lot growing up. I went to 2 different elementary schools, 3 different middle schools, and 2 different high schools. So I have realized that because of the environment that I grew up in, and I was constantly being thrown into these new spaces and having to not eat lunch alone every time I went to a new school, that I always kind of just put my best foot forward and knew that like I'd make a new friend, I'd figure out how to like navigate the new school. I can't tell you how many times, like, I think I tried out to be on like a dance team, basketball team, ran for student body president twice. And like, I was treasurer once. So you could say that I like succeeded. But to me, like the way that I think a lot of people think about failure and trying to do things, think because of how I grew up, like it's not really my perception of failure. Like as long as I learn something from it, and as long as I'm like not doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same results, like that's truly insanity. That like, as long as I've learned something by trying something, like I'm winning at the end of the day, which sounds really lame and really cliche, but I think that's what gave me the confidence to try to go out and build this business. Is like, I had the resilience to know that like I would figure it out. Like I would find a way. And what I'll say too, is I did a little bit of research before I got into the industry, and there was 2,500 interior designers within 25 miles of Costa Mesa.
Crazy.
What that means is it's not only a really, I think, mindset. This goes back to like what you always talk about, but like a lot of people could be like, oh, 2,500 interior designers within 25 miles. Like, how am I ever going to stand out? My mind, I was like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a lot of resources here then.
Yeah.
Like if there's that many people, there's probably that many people trying to sell to those people and teach these people. And like, so I looked at it as like, wow, there's probably a ton of resources that exist here. And that's really what I did. Like I listened to podcasts and I learned about all of these, you know, showrooms that existed and third party, like I would say like purchasing houses. Like I learned from my curiosity of the resources that existed. And that's what gave me the confidence. Is like, I was like, I just need to know enough to be dangerous and I'll learn everything else on the fly. Like, right? You'll figure it out. You'll figure out that you need a P-trap when you have a floating vanity because you'll know someone who knows the right information. But it was just knowing that all these resources existed here and not being discouraged by how saturated this Orange County market is, because it really is. It's very saturated.
Well, obviously, it has not slowed you down. If there are 8 of you in your company, obviously you're well over 1 million, probably more. And so we know that when you get to that point, that you have to have some sort of foundational knowledge that has supported you to make a success of what you're doing. So how do you think you learned so much about business so quickly, besides the curiosity?
Besides the curiosity. So I think it does come rooted from like just being a curious person. There's multiple parts that I've like learned on the fly. And I think a lot of people have a misconception of myself right now. And they hear like, oh, Ali, you worked in consulting, you worked at Deloitte. You must have like looked at P&Ls all the time. Like, no, I didn't. Like I would help with like budgets and things like that. But like gross profit margins and like net profit margins, if this sounds like a foreign language to you, let me tell you, it was for me as well. Like as of 2.5 years ago, this was stuff that I knew that I needed to know. But really the curiosity is what like the curiosity and being really tired of making no money was really what drove me to start trying to figure out how to do this. But I knew how to build a client experience and client journey. I knew how to like build the operation side of the business, but I knew that I didn't know the finances of a business, more or less an interior design business. So that's when I started to like look at like maybe a fractional CFO, and started to explore that route. And then when you get to the point where you're tired and you want to make more money, you also think to yourself like, okay, how do I do less? And you think about hiring, and it kind of becomes a domino. And then you go start to a recruiter and they say, hey, you want to hire, how much can you spend? And you're like, well, I have no idea how much I need to spend. And that's what led me to you guys, full circle, right? Is I wanted to hire someone. I wanted to make more money. I didn't know how much I could afford to pay someone. And someone, Ken, was like, hey, you got to go over here. And I was like, okay. And I took the course twice. Like I took the financial course twice. And I will say that everyone can hear the same message, but I heard it so differently. And literally, like, my husband and I would put you up on my TV in my living room on a Sunday and like go through the business model of interior design and like it. And then I took that information and I applied it to my own business. Okay. Based off how much you want to make per year, this is what your top line revenue needs to be. And I worked backwards and I was like, okay. And it also was like failing. Mm-hmm. It was also a lot of failure that really pushed me to try to figure this out. And I could talk more about that, but anyways, it was like falling flat on my face that really caused me to say, like, you really got to figure this out because you left like a great salary working at Deloitte, working at the startup. Like, you did not get into this business for a hobby. You did this to create a life for yourself and your team, and you've got to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I knew like the whole was like the financial piece for me, mm-hmm. and I had to figure out how to learn it.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you took the class twice, and my God, I'm a little embarrassed. I was on your big TV set.
Living room. Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, I think you hit on this, but why is it so important to learn how to run a business versus just being a great designer?
I think for me, like, I have not gone to interior design school. I didn't work in another firm before. And I think if you have that skill set, like, and you know the business, like, you're a double whammy, right? But I think in order to really have an understanding of like how you are going to get to where you want to be in life, like, and how you want to support your family or support your lifestyle. Like, it's so, you do have to work backwards. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to live a certain way or be able to provide for your team, like, it's so crucial for you to have an understanding of like, what size project do you need? And how many of them do you need? For me, more than anything, what I'll say is that like, okay, so this was 2.5 years ago in the business, and I'll tell you a story. I got a new office space and I hired a new person, and I did that very blindly. Let me throw that out there. I was just like, I'll figure it out. Again, that like unbeknownst confidence that I have. I was like, well, I'll figure this out. And what happened was I had 2 employees, a new office space, and I had it within 6 months. I had 9 bids that I sent out. And up to this point, I had been signing everything. Well, what I didn't realize now is I was kind of moving into a new clientele. And of those 9 bids that I sent out, I only signed 2 of them. One was my mother-in-law's guest bedroom, and I think she really felt bad for me. And honestly, like, she probably felt bad for me. And in that moment, not too long after too, I only have 2 jobs. I thought I was going to sign them all. I get all this overhead, and I had a project put, a whole home of furniture on hold. And it really made me realize, like, Ali, like, you have $30,000 in the bank account, which, full transparency, is not all profit and it's not yours. Like, you have got to figure out, like, what size projects for your size firm do you need? And I was chasing all of these, like, the 9 jobs that I was chasing while I was getting considered for these larger projects. I was writing off all these small jobs. Like, and when I say small, I mean like, a living room, when in reality, like, the size of the firm that I had, like, those smaller jobs would have been profitable for my firm. So I really had to take a lens and look at my business and say, what does my business need in order to be profitable? Rather than just chasing all of these big jobs and not building to understand that, like, it takes time to get that level of job, and you don't need that size job in order to run a profitable business. And so it took me, like, that experience of falling flat on my face and having only $30,000 in the bank account and just writing off all of these potential jobs that would have been really profitable for me, because I was chasing all the big ones, not realizing, like, what I needed for my size business to be able to, like, continue to grow. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably a really good example of why I think you should know your business and what your business needs in order to not only run, but be profitable, because it's so different from firm size, location. It's really important for you to have an idea of what are the numbers you need to do in order for you to grow your business. I would even say just break even.
Well, exactly. And if you look at the stats for all businesses, it's only, I think it's 40% are profitable, 60% are not. So we're talking across the country, millions of businesses. That's true. And so the reality is the fact that you're thinking about that is a different mindset than almost all designers out there. So I hope everybody listens to that and pays attention to that, because honestly, you're in the business to make money and you just happen to be doing something you love. So enjoy that. But just remember, this is a business. It really is a business. And if you do it the right way, you're going to have make a lot more money. And we have had so many people make so much money in this business. This is probably one of the most lucrative businesses that you can possibly run. And so if you know how to run it optimally, you're going to do very, very well for yourself.
It's a complicated business too. I'll say, yeah, it's really complicated. But it's unique. Like, what businesses do you have the opportunity to not only sell the service that you're doing, but also sell product? It's really unique. And like, I could talk like numbers all day, but like the reason I ended up getting into this business is, I come from a hospitality, like I want to truly help people better. And like, that's my like sole mission in life. It just so happens that interior design is something that I naturally had a good eye for, but like, I probably could have gotten into any business that allowed me to help people better. And when I say help people better, it's about creating a seamless and stress-free client experience. It's about giving them a more personalized design and saying like, hey, are you on the left side of the vanity or the right side? Are you left-handed? So we'll put the hair dryer on the left-hand side of this drawer. Like, it's about helping people better. And I really could have done that in any business. But that's like truly what I'm passionate about. And if I'm going to use my passion to also, generate income, like what better thing to do it with than something that you really deeply care about? So yeah, sometimes I feel like I can go down this like numbers rabbit hole and everyone's like, oh my gosh, this girl's just trying to like grow. But it's like, I'm truly just so passionate about, people and this business. It really is like, that's what makes us different at the end of the day. I don't mean to poo-poo, but like interior design, like we all are providing like a commodity and a sofa. So when you think about it, it's like what makes us different amongst each other is how we provide that sofa. Is it an English rolled arm? Is it the way that I take you to our workroom and let you sit and experience it? I really think that interior design at the end of the day, what makes us all different is truly who we are and the level of service that we provide that's connected to that commodity, like a sofa or a house.
I couldn't agree more. I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one. Well, let's talk about inspiration. So what inspires you besides travel, popcorn, and plants? I believe those are the things you mentioned before.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I'm really inspired by, like, if you were to scroll through like my TikTok or like my Instagram Reels page, like I'm really inspired. I think from a travel side of things, like English and like old world design is really much at the forefront of like where I'm pulling inspiration from a design lens. I just think that we have so much of the timeless materials that are used when we look at old world design that can be so much a statement, but also something that'll stand the test of time in someone's home. So from like an inspo travel standpoint, there's that. The other thing that you'll see as I scroll through my TikTok is I'm very inspired by like kind leadership. And it's something that when I talk about helping people better, I'm so passionate about serving my clients, but I'm extremely passionate about serving my team. And that's really what, like, it kind of, if you can see my arms, I have goosebumps right now. Like, I want to serve people better. And it's not just my clients, but serve my team and give them a place that they really love to work, and give them a place that they actually feel like they're getting paid fairly, that they're happy, that they are excited to help us grow. Like, being a kind leader is something that really inspires me, to support my team, and not only support the growth of our business, but the growth of them, like, each as individuals.
Well, what's your big vision for the future?
So remember when I told you that moment where I had only $30,000 in the bank account, and I was like, okay. So when that moment happened to me, I was like, okay, we've really got to, like, figure this out. And I went through I used your lead tracker form. Sorry, Gail. I'm like giving you a lot of kudos right now, but it's so true. I was using your lead tracker form, and I realized that 50% of my business was coming from Instagram. So when you asked me about my vision of the company, I got really clear like 2.5 years ago. And I really do think that getting so clear on my vision is what has, like, propelled our growth. And what I did is I was like, okay, if 50% of our business is coming from Instagram, how much billable time am I spending on that? Great. I'm going to outsource this and pay someone to go do that, because I need to buy my time back to work on other parts of the business. Well, anyways, when I hired someone to help us with social media, I said, hey, her name's Anne. She's full-time with us now. And I said, Anne, I know what my, like, 10-year goal is. I know what my big vision is for this company. And in everything that we do, our why is helping people better. So I was like, let's position ourselves on Instagram and tell people, like, tell our ideal clientele, like, here's how we're going to help you better. Here's what our client experience is. And then I was like, I do want to help, like, you know, other people build their businesses better one day. Like, again, that common thread. So I was like, why don't we put out this information? I think other interior designers inherently will be interested in how we operate. It's not going to be marketing material that speaks to them, but I do think it's going to help them. So I was like, okay, let's build the interior design firm that's going to help our clients better, help our team better. Let's then look at the second vertical as, like, I don't know what it entirely is right now. Maybe it's something to help interior designers better. And I don't know if it's like a template that we're selling online. I right now, you know, speak at workshops, and that's really fulfilling for me. I speak at local colleges. And then my third vertical that I want to build is like, okay, if I've helped all these people build businesses, I want to give them a tool to run their businesses better as well. So my big grandiose vision is like, is it a tech platform that helps them run their businesses better? Everything, when I think about the big vision of this company, it's all tied back to that. And going, and I will say almost hitting that, like, rock bottom in that time of my business made me really intentional with, like, why was I doing this and how was I going to think about the growth of the company? And it needed to be all tied back to something. So wish me luck.
I don't need to wish you luck. You got it.
I know I'm going to do it.
You're going to totally do it. I know it. All you have to do is have that vision and just have a plan. If you have vision and a plan and you're determined, you'll do it. So I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah. So my vision is get all of the right team into place right now. That's, like, really my vision and focus is, like, really building a strong team so that I can then start to, you know, over the next few years, look at how to create those other verticals that I was talking about.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, how have you built such a big following on social media so quickly?
So I would say, again, it's like when you hit, a lot of the times when you almost, like, hit rock bottom, I genuinely, I guess it was like 1.5 years ago that this all happened. Like, I thought the business was either going to grow or die, and I had to do something different. Like, I couldn't keep doing the same thing over and over again. I lost 7 jobs. Like, I needed to do something different. And I think it goes back to, like, my confidence of just, I knew when I started this business, like, if I'm going to do this, I am going to be unapologetically myself. Like, especially when it's a service-based business, that's so much an extension of yourself. And I thought about like, oh, should I show that I drink Monster energy drinks and this is my toxic trait? Should I show people that I eat Taco Bell? Like I do curse like a sailor from time to time. And like, do I show that? Yeah. Like, do I show that on Instagram? And I think that like, it's so much easier to just be yourself more than anyone else. And I chose very early on when I started building my Instagram that I wasn't going to try to be everything to everyone. Like I was like, if that turns someone off, they're probably not going to be like the fun client that I want to present to and make a margarita for later. Mm-hmm. Like and I think that the following really came into play too when I looked at how my time was being spent, and when I hired Anne and I said, Anne, I really want to show people how we do things differently, not just the pretty photos. And that's really, it took us, I will say this from like a social media standpoint. I have people ask me all the time, like, how did you grow? Like I hired Anne and it took us 9 months to grow 2,000 followers. It's taken us in a year and a half, we've grown like 30K in like the past year and a half, but 9 months in the beginning, it took us we only grew 2,000 followers. It takes time to like build your audience and realize like, but why I stuck out those 9 months is not because our follower count didn't increase, but our leads had doubled. So it was worth it. But I really think the growth was tied to showing people how we did things differently. Mm-hmm. And it was something that a lot of people weren't doing on Instagram in interior design. Like people were not doing reels of their construction binders. People weren't showing people like the process of how to work with them. And I think it was unique and it was interesting to not only clients, but also the interior design industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think that's brilliant, because that is the defining difference between you and other people is how you do things, not what you do. Because what everybody does as a designer is pretty much the same. Maybe you have a different aesthetic and maybe you have a different, selection of vendors and subs that you work with. But in the end, you're doing the same process. It just there has to be that defining differential that makes you the best at something. But here's something else that I will say, and that is, in listening to you, is that your interest in the numbers part is helping inform your decisions. And I think that's a real critical factor that people need to think about, is if you're not comfortable with understanding your numbers, and that's everything, whether it's social media, whether it's how much billable you're getting out of your team or whatever it is, you need to understand that that's the heart of the business that makes it work. And if you don't know that part, then you've got to go figure out that piece. And you were very smart to latch onto that very early.
Yeah, like I said, this great group called the Pro Collective helped me with all these resources. But I do think that the crutch of it all is like what helps you take these risks is like they're informed risks. Mm-hmm. Yes, like there's no doubt that like going and hiring, someone for social media, that's a risk. But if you have the data that's saying like, hey, that's it, your time would be a lot better spent doing something else, go hire someone to go do that part. And I think that's just like so crucial to like growth. How else are you going to grow? You're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again if you aren't paying attention to the numbers.
Absolutely correct. Well, I love it. You've given us a lot of great nuggets, and I'd like you to pick 3 that you would like to highlight that you think are the most important things for people to pay attention to from this podcast.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. I would say number 1, you just need to know enough to be dangerous to start. Lean on resources. There's so many vendors, coaches, people who want to work for other people. There's so many resources out there to allow you to learn on the fly. The second thing I would say is know your data and know your business, because again, 2.5 years ago, I was chasing all these big jobs because that's what the other firms that I wanted to be like were doing. When those jobs didn't end up working out for me, I overlooked all of the jobs that were actually extremely profitable for my size firm. So I'd say know your data and know your business. And then 3, what would I say? I would say that hire people who are smarter than you and get out of their way.
Absolutely. Perfect.
Yeah. Hire people.
Hire smart people.
Smart.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And get out of their way and let them do their thing.
Absolutely.
Because the more that you empower them, and it's just going to go a long way to not only giving you the fulfillment of seeing your business grow, but also fulfill them and letting them use their superpower.
Awesome. Ali, this is great. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. We appreciate it. And I know a lot of people will be inspired from what you shared today.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. I hope I inspired people. Not absolutely. I would, but no, thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks, Ali, for joining Gail on the podcast and discussing your business successes and challenges. We hope you're feeling inspired to keep your motivation high, even if you face setbacks. See you again for next week's episode.